have a vlog? That's really cool.
All right, so we're back with IT Coach for Business Leaders. I think we're finally through our first mini-series and started into a new mini-series now. We're on episode 4. This week, we're talking top 3 small and mid-sized business IT challenges, and this is part 2. And the topic today is staying current with your technology.
Yeah.
So before we get started talking about business technology, I thought it would be kind of fun to talk about household technology.
All right.
So here's my question for you. What's the oldest piece of technology you still have in use in your household?
The oldest piece of technology still in our house. I guess.
And this would be kind of like computer technology, not necessarily
So
like
not-
coffee machines or things like that.
How about a
but-
cassette tape player? I think we do still have one of those.
Well, that's
So-
a pretty good example. Yeah, a cassette tape player.
Because you have, there's a few items that they just never got released in CD.
Yep.
I'll tell you, our desktop that primarily my wife's the main user on it is probably knocking on 6 or 7 years old. Now, I will tell you that when I bought it, I bought, the latest, greatest, and
Oh yeah.
tricked it out so it would last for a while. I will say I just ordered a replacement for that, so it's on the way. We're going to move to she's going to just start using a laptop instead of a desktop, so we get rid of some furniture
Yeah.
as well, hopefully.
Yeah.
So
So what do you do with that old technology? Is there like a closet that you put it in so you can hang on to it, or do you toss it? What do you do with it once you're done?
well, what I will do is, because I'm fortunate enough to work here, we have a relationship with some companies that will come and haul off old gear, and so I will bring it in and simply turn it over to them. And there's some great services out there that do that type of thing. Typically, they don't even charge
Oh, wow.
because they make their money off the recycling of it.
Hmm.
A lot of them will give you certificates of destruction. So if you need to guarantee that the data has been wiped or something like that, as a best practice, I would probably try to wipe it myself first,
Sure.
because I don't trust anybody, right? But they will do that for you, and that's especially important if you're under some type of compliance, like a HIPAA regulation or something like that says you've got to make sure that data is truly gone.
Yeah. When I was thinking about in my household what the, some of the oldest technology that I'm still using, I still have an Atari 5200
Wow.
that works, that I can plug up and play the old games. And I actually went to, McKay's used bookstore here, and they do more than books, obviously, and bought some controllers because I had lost the controllers over the years. And I had to kind of finagle the way it plugs into the TV because, it had those 2 old pronged
Right.
metal connectors that you tightened the screws down on. That was how it used to
Wow.
connect to the TV, the VHS, UHF switch and all of
Yeah.
that. And
I think you win, because we have a Nintendo Wii, the original one, and
Yeah.
it rarely gets serviced nowadays. But I can't top it.
the Atari-
Yeah,
so
sorry, yeah.
when my girls get a little older, I'll teach them the ways of the Atari because,
Right.
that was my childhood.
Yeah. And some of those games are, for my generation, much more playable than today's, because they're the kind of
Yeah.
thing you can just sit down and learn in a couple of minutes.
Oh, yeah.
And go. And today's, I'm just like, yeah.
I'm lost. I haven't bought a game system
Right.
in years and years. And if I tried to pick up one of the modern games, I would, it would not be pretty. So on the flip side, what's the newest piece of tech that you've bought for your home?
Well, I think it would be the laptop that I just ordered. I've got it's an HP that's coming in. It's one of the new convertible machines that doubles as a laptop or where it'll spin around and it can be a tablet or a laptop for my wife to use.
I've been using the Microsoft Surface for a few years, and I don't
Yeah.
think I would go back to the old traditional
Right.
clamshell laptop. I really like the whole, convertible tablet type setup. It makes it so easy, and when you're traveling, it's great. So I guess the newest piece of technology in our home, we actually bought kind of that Google Home speaker that you can, talk and interact with, and
Yeah.
the Chromecast hooks
Right.
up to your TV, so you can tell your TV to, play a certain show on Netflix, and it'll just automatically start it up and all. It's pretty neat. So we probably play music on it more than anything.
Right.
So it sort of just replaces your old, CD player, receiver, speakers kind of setup. Now it's just ask the Google Home to play,
Right.
Some Pearl Jam or whatever I'm listening to that day. Well, cool. So when we got together and did a little preparation for today's episode, talking about staying current with technology, thinking about this being a serious business IT challenge, staying current with technology. And to me, there's kind of two sides of that, and I'm sure we'll talk about both today. One is keeping your existing technology current,
Right.
and the other is buying new technology, or staying on the cutting edge of technology. So thinking about that, knowing how busy internal resources are at small companies, they don't have tons of IT resources just sitting around waiting for things to do. How is it so challenging for them, or why is it so challenging for them to just either evaluate the new technology
Sure.
that's coming out, or to on the other side to update what they still have?
Well, I think it's a great point that you make, that there are those two divisions. There's the keeping your current stuff running, and then there's the putting in new things, not only to just refresh, but also to get new capabilities that you didn't have before. And that first one, it's amazing. It's gotten better for sure.
Yeah.
With automatic updates and things like that the vendors will push out. But it's definitely a challenge. And I think the biggest reason it's such a challenge is just the sheer volume of updates that are coming out. And you multiply that by the number of types of systems that you have out there, just keeping up with it all. It's important to keep up with it because a lot of those fixes are for one reason, one alone, and that's security.
Yeah.
They're fixing things that are vulnerabilities that will allow the bad guys to come in and do things that you don't want them to, and just keeping up with all those, because you can't just necessarily say, I'm going to do automatic everything, let everything go whatever they want, because we still live in a world of incompatibilities and
Yeah.
software, and you may be running an older piece of software that's near and dear to your heart, but it may not run on the latest, greatest version. And so,
Yeah.
in fact, I was just yesterday working with a customer. We were doing setting up patch management for their entire enterprise, and we were talking about some of their accounting computers are running a particular piece of accounting software that we know has problems when it gets patched to the latest, greatest. So we had to tread lightly and walk into that and make sure that we do a test. So it's a lot of busy work, and so I think a lot of focus has to come on that. I think the other side of the house is getting the new technology in there, and you and I have talked about this before. A lot of that goes to a disconnect between management and IT and what the goals of that business are.
Yeah.
And so the IT person, they're not out looking to get the latest, greatest thing unless someone's telling them, well, here's your budget, here's what we're needing to do. And a lot of times those conversations aren't happening.
Yeah. I would assume maybe the IT mindset is to upgrade for, performance or for technical reasons. And then you've got the leadership, which is we need new capabilities, or,
Right.
there might be new functionality, or we might need to support some new business processes that we've implemented. And yeah, those don't always match up.
And particularly in a business, I mean, it's got to be driven by the latter thing that you said. It's got to be
Yeah.
driven by management and the capabilities. IT people left them to their own devices. We're going to go do what's cool and fun and we want to work with. That may or may not be, what drives the business forward. And so, yeah, those conversations have got to happen.
Yeah. Now, we also talked about, embedded IT personnel within a company are so focused on what their company has that they don't always get they don't have the ability to look outside
Right.
to see what else may be available to stay up to date on all of the trends, all of the, applications, hardware, all of the new technology coming out. But you mentioned a concept of cross-pollination related to, an IT partner like an InfoSystems. Can you explain what you meant by that?
So, and I think you'd use the term that the businesses tend to have myopia about, they can only see what's going on inside of them. I have within the last couple of years gotten into beekeeping. That's my hobby that I do. That's about as non-technological as you can get. So it's where I run at the end of the day.
You got to have that outlet.
Yeah, when I'm tired of blinky lights and
Yeah.
and so I want to get back to nature and do some things there. And wonderful hobby, love it so much. But it's a great concept in beekeeping that the bees do that service for us, that cross-pollination, to where they're flying from flower to flower and moving things around, moving pollen from this one to this one. And a lot of the crops and things that we have would not exist without those pollinators out there.
Mm-hmm.
This sounds like a soapbox issue. Let's promote beekeeping and save the bees while we're at it too. But
Yeah.
but the same thing's true in business. You need exposure to other businesses and what they're doing. And there's lots of ways to do that, right? I mean, there's conferences out there. I will say sometimes even those conferences can be myopic if you get just a bunch of just lawyers together or just accountants together. They may miss out on things that the other one are doing. So
Sure.
you need some of that cross-pollination. And so that can be another argument for using outsourcing and people like InfoSystems, they can come in and we get exposure. We're flying around to all those different businesses that can see things. It's like, ooh, I see what this is doing here. That would help this business as well.
Yeah.
And it's just, I think it's a great service that we offer.
Well, if you think about it, it's very valuable to have someone who knows about all of the new stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also valuable to have someone who knows about the old
Oh,
stuff.
absolutely.
So that deep experience over years and years of doing what you do, plus staying up to date on everything that comes out, that's an invaluable resource for someone who doesn't have that ability themselves. From my perspective as a marketing professional, I do a decent job of staying up to date on marketing tools and software and all of the stuff that's out on the market. But when I feel like I'm in a pretty good place with what I have, and someone like a salesperson or someone reaches out to me to talk to me about something new, my first response is usually the stiff arm, keep them at a distance, don't mess with what I've got in place, it's working for me right now. But when I identify an area where I need help, or I've identified something that I would like to have in the future, and somebody reaches out to me about that, I'm usually very willing to take that conversation. Do you see that same type of response from business leaders that you work with?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's and I'm happy to not be in sales. I don't handle rejection well, so I don't want to be the guy going in doing that cold calling. So I'm very grateful to our sales guys that go out and reach out. But yeah, I mean, I think that's human nature. You're going to give the stiff arm because someone's coming to you talking about new stuff. Well, that first of all, that means money.
Yeah.
And people don't want to part with that pocketbook, right? And it goes beyond money, though. I mean, it gets into change and the C word. And we all, as human beings, fear change and everything that goes with it, and just all the training, the retraining you've got to do. And but yeah, once we're interested in something, we recognize a need in our business, we can be a lot more receptive to talking to someone.
Yeah.
So it's tough finding that balance sometimes. I would encourage you know to be open, and I get it. We're all busy, and I get the same thing. We have vendors hitting us up all the time. It's like, who sell our product? You
Yeah.
know, take this to your customers, and I quite frankly have to give some of them the stiff arm because
Right.
there's only so many hours in a day. So I get it. Business leaders, they're trying to concentrate on running their business, but you know, I would encourage them to, you know, at least take a look. Look for those opportunities to cross-pollinate and look for things that might help in your business because you don't know what you might be missing out on.
Yeah. You know, it just brought up a thought. I don't know if there are any like IT networking groups for business leaders or for, you know, IT professionals around town, but that, you know, I know InfoSystems in the past, we used to have a user group meeting here, like a small business IT user group meeting, and you know, that ran its course, I think, and it's something that we don't do anymore, but maybe the Chattanooga Technology Council and the events they do, you know, I'm sure there are probably resources in our community where you can interface and kind of cross-pollinate
Absolutely.
ideas with, you know, other business professionals related to IT. But, you know, that's one thing I want to do moving forward too with InfoSystems is look for those opportunities where we can support those places for business leaders to go. And that's part of what we're doing here too, you know, hopefully is sharing information that can help,
Right.
you know, prevent that tunnel vision, myopic view of technology and open some doors for people to understand some of the other topics and new stuff going on in the market. So, you know, talking about the new technology versus maintaining existing technology, is there a higher cost associated with keeping existing systems up to date as they get older and older and older? And how does that compare with, you know, maybe implementing something new or replacement, or do you have comments there?
Yeah, I mean, there certainly is, and you know, the conventional wisdom is going to tell you, you know, run it as long as you can. The cheapest computer you're going to own is the one that you own now, right?
Right.
And that certainly plays true in certain instances. You know, it's good wisdom when you're driving a car, right? Maybe not as good a wisdom when you're talking about your IT needs. And then the reason why is, you know, one, the vendors know that they can only support a platform for so long. And so you will see the cost of hardware maintenance tend to go up dramatically, especially after about that fifth year. You know, you typically get a fairly good deal on support products after that time. Beyond that, though, it's not just a dollars and cents as far as, you know, paying for coverage. It gets into productivity. You know, the longer that you're running something, we all know computers just keep getting faster and faster, and your business is competing with other businesses, and if they're getting ahead of you in their productivity because they have increased their capability through their IT needs, you may be in a losing battle because of that. You also get into those compatibility issues, that's what we struggle with lots of times with customers who have clung to old stuff for so long, whether it be old software or old hardware. And old and new don't always mix well,
Right.
And you run into those issues. So sometimes you can literally paint yourself into a corner to where it becomes very difficult to do the upgrades that you want to do because you've got this boat anchor of these old things holding you back. So yeah, I mean, it's a balancing act. And again, it goes to having those conversations, sitting down with, you know, your trusted expert and figuring out what a good life cycle should be. You know, design that up front and make the commitment. Like we're buying this piece of technology, whatever it is, whether it's a server or a piece of software or a cloud, you know, alliance that you're doing with someone, and figure out what the life cycle is going to be and what your next steps are going to be past that.
Yeah. You know, a lot of times I relate when you're talking maintenance agreements and the escalating costs and stuff. I think a lot of times people, and this is from my own perspective, but I would assume other people might share this perspective. a lot of times you're skeptical when people are offering maintenance, ongoing maintenance and those types, because I mean, I think back to my early days of driving a car, and it was pushed out into the marketplace that you needed to change your oil every 3 months or every 3,000 miles.
Right.
And then suddenly in the last, more recent years, that number has grown and grown and grown, and maybe partially because car technology is better, but the environmental conservation effort has come out to say, you know what, you don't really need to change your oil every 3 months and every 3,000 miles. Maybe every 8 or 10,000 miles, or maybe every 15, whatever the recommendations are now. But things like that, when that happens, it creates skepticism for everything else, that you're buying and using about, the cost of maintaining and do I really need to, apply these patches and upgrades to my software, or can I just kind of skip that for now and, skip a cycle and do it next time? But, so I think there are some barriers that exist in, people's mindset related to the costs of keeping things current. Do you see that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I share it. I'm the same way. I'll tell you what, I mean, I go into a Best Buy or some other store, and I pick up the latest electronic widget of some sort, and you get up there to the front, and what's the first thing they try to tell you?
Yeah, warranty.
Warranty extension kind of thing. And I'll universally turn those down because they don't make sense. If they did make sense, they wouldn't be in business, right?
Right.
They have to price things to where they're making money on it. Is that true in the commercial market? Well, yes, they are making money off it. It's a profit center for them to be able to keep those maintenance. But here's the difference. It comes down to a business decision. And you're aware that when we're talking about reliability in your network, you're measuring that in a number of nines, right? So 90%, 99%, 99.9, you take those decimal places out. And that's a pure business decision that you've got to make, is what kind of nines reliability that do you need in your network. If you're a 90%er, then maybe you don't need to keep maintenance on that, because if you have a piece of hardware fail, and let's be honest, they're going to fail at some point.
Right.
Nothing lasts forever. Maybe you don't need that. Maybe you can tolerate a downtime until someone can get out there and get it fixed. But if you're needing 4 nines, 5 nines, something like that, if you've got to have that level of service to where you can't be down because it costs you too much money, every hour that goes by in your business costs you thousands of dollars, and you better invest in that maintenance to make sure that when something happens, and I say when something happens because it's going to happen, that you can get quick response. So business and consumer, I think in that they're two different worlds.
Yeah, and when you talk about the risk, obviously there's a conversation there and maybe you can talk about what are some of the risks that are associated to different pieces of technology, because I know if business systems go down, there's different types of systems in place, and each has a different priority.
Right.
And so maybe decisions are made on an individual basis for which ones make sense to really focus on keeping up to date, which ones don't.
I think that's absolutely true, and it's going to vary from business to business. And again, that's why having those conversations is so important. Some businesses you can go into, and the most critical piece of thing that they have is an email server, right? They've got to be able to communicate. Yeah. Other businesses, it's their CRM system, so they can reach out to their customers, or it's their accounting system, if it's a manufacturer, it's their manufacturing system. Right. These are the crucial pieces. And so, To borrow a phrase from one of our sales guys, we've yet to walk into a customer that has unlimited bags of cash just sitting around to throw at IT.
Yeah.
So yeah, you've got to prioritize, and so that first conversation is, okay, what do we have? What's critical? You know, what, and because you probably cannot afford to have, 4 nines of reliability on every one of your systems. You don't have that kind of, no one has that kind of cash. But you can afford and have to, you don't have a choice on the things that are business critical, that if they're not running, you're out of business, you can't function.
So in your role as VCIO, when you're working with customers, is that something you help them do, is map out the technology and kind of assign how business critical it is, and create that, the structure of what are the most important systems and what's our strategy to maintain those?
Absolutely. And I found that it's often, when I actually sit down with executives and just kind of walk through that and explain to them that we're going to look at your systems, look at your assets, determine your criticality, I often get just a kind of a sigh of relief from them, because they've been told and marketed to that, I've got to protect everything all the time. It's all equal importance. And so when you show them that, well, no, not everything's business critical, there's often a sigh of relief, and then they can start to look through it, because that's who they are as executives. They're used to making those risk decisions, and so when you put it in those terms instead of the generic IT terms, the light bulb goes off, and they start to realize this is just a business decision, just like I make every day.
Yeah, that's true. We talked about when we were preparing for this episode, we talked about there are a lot of internal situations that a business encounters that can impact their ability to keep things current. And some of the things we were talking about were, turnover in their IT department. You've already brought up budget. Maybe that something has happened where they've experienced a merger or acquisition, or different types of changes to the business as a whole, and then also just changes within the company culture. Do you have some personal experiences working where you've seen some of those things happen, and how they've impacted a company or prevented them from being where they really should be with their technology?
Well, I think of all the ones you mentioned, and all of them are certainly contributors, I think the first one, the turnover thing, that's the one you see most frequently contribute to these kind of problems, because you have the person that's been in there and they're the subject matter expert on that given system. They leave and there is no subject matter expert, and the systems just tend to just run unattended, and people forget that they need maintenance, that they need to be kept up to date. No one's reading that email. Perhaps the email that would tell them is like, hey, there's a new patch out on this, or we've got a new release coming out. That was probably coming to that person who set it up originally. Yeah. And now those emails are just bouncing. So no one's minding the store on that anymore. Company culture change, certainly. Mergers are a big thing. You see a company get bought out, and those old systems are still important because they're still functioning in that role, but the new company, maybe their IT people, the bigger company's IT may have taken over, and those things get overlooked. So yeah, there's lots of things that can hold people back from keeping up to date, and just pure busyness, right? I'd say that's, in truth, probably number one. Just people get overwhelmed with everything they've got to do, both from a maintenance standpoint and a help desk standpoint and a new initiatives. And so there's got to be, again, I keep harping on it, but it's because I see it every day. Like this happened yesterday. I was in a company and working with their 2 IT guys that are there, and they started showing me the list of things, initiatives that they've been asked to do that are coming from this department head, this department head, this department head, this department head. Well, those department heads, they didn't come together and collude to overwhelm IT.
Yeah.
They're just showing all their needs, and they're all saying, we need all these things to come up in December. So I was just like, okay, give them to me. So we got a sheet of paper out, jotted down the list. There was 12 things, and they were all major. And I was like, okay, I'll be back. I walked over to the CEO's office and said, here's what's going on. She was very gracious, just like, oh, yeah, I understand that can't all happen at once. Let me help you prioritize and figure that out.
Yeah, I was going to mention, you said it's not like all of those department heads got together to collude to overwhelm, but they also don't get together to, discuss how they can lighten the workload on IT.
No,
it's just they're interacting individually with IT without knowing what else they may have on their plate.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean,
it goes back to having a seat at the table.
Yeah.
It's important for someone in IT to have it, because those departments have management meetings, right?
Yeah.
So it's important to have a seat at the table in there for someone's looking out for IT's interest.
Yeah, and when I was thinking about these factors that we talked about, the turnover, budget, mergers, culture, I thought, and this may sound salesy for InfoSystems, but I just thought how a good IT partner can really mitigate all of those factors if it's someone you've been working with over time who knows all of your internal IT. So if turnover happens, you still have someone, your partner, who really has a handle on everything and can get the new IT resources up to speed.
Yeah, absolutely.
And take on the workload in the meantime. And, so all of those things can really be sort of mitigated by having a solid partnership in place. Now, another thing that I thought was interesting, and I think we could probably finish the episode here, but there's a flip side to this conversation that maybe you have, and this is probably a real scenario in a lot of companies, especially as younger people are being hired in, people who grew up with technology.
I know where this is going,
technology
Josh.
first, the millennial generation, and they're going to be the largest generation represented in the workplace.
Right.
If they're not already, then very soon. And as they move into leadership roles, it's very easy for an employee who has these great visions of high tech, latest, greatest everything to try and force new technology into a culture or into an IT environment where it just doesn't really work. Have you seen that?
Absolutely.
What are your thoughts?
And let me turn the tables on you. This game that we've been playing from time to time, the business buzzword thing.
Yeah.
So you haven't hit me one. Let me hit you with one today.
Okay.
So I think there's a word that maybe defines what you're talking about, and it's the cool word out there in business right now. It's disruption.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
And it is. It's the young go-getters and great. I'm glad they're after it and they're wanting it, but. Yeah, it's disruption, and it actually lives up to the title, and they come in and they want the latest, greatest thing. They want it's BYOD. That's a big challenge that businesses are dealing with now. People bringing their own devices. We want to integrate this into your network.
Yeah.
We came from this business. They had this. I can't function without this.
Yeah.
And in some cases, literally, they can't.
Right.
So yeah, it's pushing them, driving them forward. So again, you've got to have someone, a trusted resource that's seeing that all from a big picture. Cross-pollination comes into that again, and seeing that. Yeah, I recognize that this technology that this new employee has brought to the table, that's completely alien to you. You've never seen it before, but they're not nuts.
Yeah.
Your competitor down the street is using that. Let me sit down with you and explain to you how this can help your business and how we can do so in a orderly transition. Not just, them go down and order it and put it in and run around dictating. It was like, you're going to start doing this.
Yeah.
Well, that's not the way business is done. It's got to be done in an orderly transition.
Yeah, and as a point of encouragement, I think I've been encouraged by the fact that, reading various IT sort of websites, IT news websites and things like that, there are a lot of articles and a lot of things coming out right now about how do companies foster the millennials and the younger generation coming up to have the technology that really, aids them in business, rather than, seeing information coming out about, maybe it would be the opposite, like how do you teach them to, pad down their passion about this and instead incorporate, our old traditional ways. You don't really hear that very much, so, that's kind of encouraging to me. It seems like a lot of businesses have on their mind, how do we incorporate these younger professionals and enable them with the tools that they really want and are used to.
Yeah, because I mean, if you can find that mixed, or you can bring the old school, how all this wisdom they brought from, blood, sweat, and tears.
Yeah,
that information is vital to the success of a business. But then also, blend in the fire of the young people that have grown up literally with a tablet or a phone plastered to their hand.
Yeah.
24 hours a day. They've got some great ideas too, but you've got to find a way to blend those and use ideas from all sides.
Yep, very true. Well, I think that's probably a good place to leave today's discussion. So we've got one more episode that we'll be dedicating to this topic of top 3 challenges for small and mid-sized business IT. So be sure to tune in to the next episode where we'll go through part 3. Thanks, Aaron.
All right, thanks, Josh.